yes, there's a moral problem, but I don't have a moral answer to it. And the only thing I can do believe, is, well, the situation in the Middle East has changed as far as the West Bank is concerned. They have a real and a serious leader who is ready for peace, and I do believe we can make peace with him, in spite of the skirmishes and here and there. And I think Gaza doesn't have a choice but to go for peace. Nobody will feed them for just shooting rockets.
There is no let-up in the explosive pounding being exchanged between Israel and Palestine. The Egyptian suggested ceasefire has failed without so much as a whimper. And while the Iron Dome defense system has saved countless lives, there is a disproportionate number of Palestinian casualties, leaving some to wonder if Israel needs to pull back or change their plan in order to save innocent lives. All part of this discussion as we welcome into MidPoint Editor-in-Chief of the Levant, a website dedicated to covering news from the Middle East in depth, promising to deliver coverage that is unapologetic and free from bias, Associate Director of the Beirut Center for Middle East Studies and political analyst for the Middle East, Shakdam. Also welcome the author of Making David into Goliath, How the World Turned Against Israel, and a fellow at the Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, Joshua Muravchik. Thank you so much for joining us both.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Let me begin the conversation right now by letting you both hear a piece of sound. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was on The Daily Show last night with Jon Stewart. She expressed sympathy for the Gazans trapped by the choices of their leadership, but also said that Israel must maintain its right to fire back against militants launching rockets. Here it is.
And, you know, the Israelis are absolutely right in saying that they can't just sit there and let rockets rain down. The Hamas leadership now feels somewhat trapped themselves because they had an ally with the Muslim Brotherhood. I negotiated the ceasefire with Morsi, and Morsi was able to convince the Hamas groups to abide by it. He's gone, and the new regime in Cairo sees Hamas as a danger to them.
All right, Catherine, ladies first. Does the former Secretary of State have it correctly?
I would say that she has a point in saying that, you know, the Egyptian government right now is not keen on having the Hamas being, having any kind of leadership in Gaza. But what I would like to say in reference to, you know, the missiles and all the violence that has been going on, that you cannot compare, you know, the rockets that the Hamas is firing at Israel. And even though I'm not justifying or even condoning what they're doing, you cannot compare the two. I mean, they have, you know, rockets that do not have any kind of long range, or, you know, they don't have any, they don't have technology. So it's basically, you know, comparing, you know, Indians and cowboys. You have people with, you know, arrows and bows, faced with people with cannons and guns.
Well, but so Catherine, let me just interrupt for a moment if I can. Are not rockets that kill no matter what they do or where they come from?
I agree that, you know, they did kill, you know, one, I think it's, there is one death has been reported today in Israel. And of course, it's never justifiable to kill someone. But allow me to say that, you know, what Israel has done onto Gaza is not justifiable either. When you see that, you know, countless people have died, I think that the last, you know, death toll count is, the tally is about 213, I believe. When we know that 70%, according to the UN, are women and children, and that, you know, 80%, according to the Gaza activists on the ground, right activists on the ground, they're all civilians. The great majority are civilians. So you basically, you know, Israel is actually saying that it is okay to target civilians because, they're acting in self-defense. And even though I can understand that no country should be made to suffer any sort of attack.
Okay, let me stop you there for a moment. Let me give Joshua a chance here. Joshua, let me bring you into this here because certainly we have now your response to this, and then there is also a response here because there are reports indicating that Hamas basically puts its own people in harm's way. They use them as human shields. So how does that then enter into the equation of the Israelis being criticized by many for killing civilians?
Well, the simple fact is it's perfectly true that there's a great disparity in the number of casualties, but there are reasons for that disparity that go way beyond the fact that Israel does have more firepower at its command than Hamas. The the largest reason for that is that Israel tries to protect its people. It spends billions of dollars both on this Iron Dome anti-missile system that you've been reading about, and also just on conventional civil defense. Every Israeli has a shelter available, and they run to them constantly during these rocket barrages. Hamas does nothing, does plenty to protect its top leadership, who hide in fortified bunkers deep beneath the ground, but they do nothing to protect their citizens. In fact, they've issued orders to the people to stay in their buildings that are going to be bombed, even when Israel has warned them in advance to get out, because Hamas wants to create martyrs for its political agenda of building pressure on Israel. And of course, they have a slogan, Hamas does, which says, "You love life and we love death." And that's precisely what they're acting on. They're deliberately trying to increase the amount of death on both sides, and Israel is trying to protect its own citizens and also minimize the number of civilian casualties on the other side while it strikes at military targets.
Catherine, is it not true that it is very difficult to feel sorry for the Palestinian people? You certainly can feel sorry for the fact that women and children are dying, but when their military leadership tells them to stand in harm's way and they have that sort of a mantra for their own people, isn't it very difficult then to criticize the Israelis for what they're doing?
Well, actually, I don't quite agree with that statement, because you basically, and this is the kind of very dangerous narrative that has been going on for quite some time. This is the type of thing that, the Israeli media has been running. It's actually quite racist and biased to say that, Palestinian people would willingly put their women and children in harm's way, for the sake of martyrdom. That's completely out of order. And I don't actually accept that as a valid argument, because, to be quite honest with you, it's basically you're trying to dehumanize Palestinian people. This is something that has been going on for decades.
I don't think we're trying to, one moment please, I don't think we're trying to dehumanize, please don't understand it that way. We're not trying to dehumanize the Palestinian people. I think what we and others are pointing out here is the military action and what they are demanding of their people.
They actually, this is something that is not true. The Hamas is actually, I agree with you when you say that, they are pushing for martyrdom, and they are telling their people that whenever they're fighting for the country, it does equate to martyrdom, and I agree in that sense. But they never ever called on women and children to act as human shield. That's
simply not true.
Okay,
okay. That's something the Israeli has been running for quite some time, because they are trying to prove that the Palestinians are not, are actually, they have a reason and a justification when targeting civilian population.
Okay, I have about 2 minutes left. Let me interrupt you for a moment. Joshua, I believe you wanted to answer back. Excuse me, one moment. Let me just get Joshua to answer back, please.
Catherine, this is cheap demagoguery on your part, because I didn't say this was what the Palestinians per se are doing. I said it's what the Hamas leadership is doing, and that's clearly documented. There was an order given by the Interior Minister of Gaza. It's available online. It's a public document. It was issued in Arabic. It's been translated into English. Any viewer can go and find it, in which Israel has been giving advance warning to people to get out of buildings that it plans to strike because there are military facilities there. And there was this document issued by the Interior Minister of Hamas calling on the Gazans not to ignore these warnings and to stay in the buildings.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you there for a moment. We only have a minute left, and I want to get a final thought in here. Catherine, is it simply not time for the Hamas military to stop firing?
No, what I would say would be, yes, I agree that it would be time for both sides to stop firing. But what I would like to say, so how can you ever justify, targeting disabled centers or schools or hospital? And you can't expect people, you have a 3-minute warning. Where are they supposed to go? Jon Stewart made a very valid point, in his last show, when he said that, are they meant to swim for it? Where do you want them to go? There is nowhere to go. They are under siege. You're asking people to run away from bombing when there's nowhere to go.
Got it. Joshua, your answer then, please, 30 seconds.
Well, Egypt yesterday proposed a ceasefire. Israel not only accepted the ceasefire, but it immediately initiated a unilateral ceasefire for 6 hours. Hamas said, to heck with you, we don't want a ceasefire. We want to keep shooting at because we're trying to kill Israelis and we don't mind if our people get killed, and they rejected it. So that's why the fighting is going on. It doesn't make any sense to blame both sides.
Catherine Shakdam, Joshua Muravchik, I want to thank you both for a very logical conversation here and for basically stating your points of view on this. We will have you back again. We will continue to follow this story. Again, we thank you both very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
You. Proves again that you can have a logical discourse on this, but certainly this is something that has passions inflamed everywhere around the world. Coming up next, Republicans are taking what they believe is a necessary cutting tool to the president's border funding request, and a report predicting the federal deficit is not something the administration and other politicians hope you ever see or pay attention to. That will change when we look to the front page of the Mothership website right here on MidPoint.